Hi, everybody. This is Jackie with Hub City Bookshop. I'm here with Leesa Cross-Smith. We're so excited to have her today. Thanks, everyone who joined us so far. Probably have a few more people coming online as we go along. So we're talking about this wonderful book today, of course, and we have signed copies of these beautiful book plates in them that Leesa made for us. And I'm going to give a little introduction for Leesa, and then she's going to do a little bit of talking and some reading for us tonight. And then if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or just use the ask a question feature and I'll voice them for Leesa. If you have anyone who's having problems logging on, just have them email me and I'll help them get online. So a little bit about Leesa. She is a homemaker and writer from Kentucky. She's the author of So We Can Glow, which came out in 2020, Whiskey and Ribbons, which Hub City Press did in 2018, Every Kiss of War in 2014, and then This Close to Okay, which of course just came out Tuesday, and Half Blown Rose, which is coming out next year. She is longlisted for the 2021 Joyce Carol Oates Literary Prize. This Close to Okay was a Book of the Month early release pick for December 2020. So We Can Glow was listed as one of NPR's best books of 2020. The novel Whiskey and Ribbons was longlisted for the 2018 Center for Fiction First Novel Prize and listed among Oprah Magazine's top books of summer. Every Kiss of War was a finalist for both the Flannery O'Connor Award for Short Fiction and the Iowa Short Fiction Award. We are so glad to have you, Leesa, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Hub City. Yeah, my first novel, Whiskey and Ribbons, came out from Hub City. Hub City changed my life in a really, really cool way. And I felt really, really blessed to be able to work with Meg and Kate and Betsy and everyone there. And they just made me feel really welcome. And I just will never forget it. I love it. I have such a beautiful book. And everyone was just so sweet about it. And that's Whiskey and Ribbons that came out. It'll be 3 years ago in March. Yeah. And and thank you, Jackie, for everything, for sure. First of all, thank you to everyone for hanging out with me tonight. Usually whenever I start my events, I like to thank everyone for coming out. But tonight I want to thank you for turning on your phones and computers and your tablets and spending a little time with me. This is totally weird and everything is still weird, but I am very, very grateful for you to take time out of your busyness and weirdness to spend some busy, weird time with me. So this is the book. I'm going to take the jacket off in just a second, but I'll show it to you. It's called This Close to Okay. It just came out on Tuesday. It's my fourth book. It's my second novel. And I usually like to talk a little bit and then I'll read a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the book is about. I'm going to do that quickly so we can just jump into reading. But the book is about a woman who's on her way home. And as she's leaving the gym and she's leaving work, she's driving across a bridge and she sees a man perched on the edge of a bridge as if he's going to jump. So her name is Tally Clark. Immediately she stops her car, she jumps out and she tells him to stop. She wants to do anything to distract him, anything to stop him from actually jumping and ending his life. When she gets him to get to the good side of the bridge, on the other side of the railing, she invites him for a cup of coffee, and she eventually ends up bringing him back to her house because it's cozy and safe. What she doesn't tell him is that she is a therapist in case he has an aversion to talk therapy. She doesn't want him to shut down. She doesn't want him to stop talking to her, and she wants him to keep opening up. She wants to keep him distracted from anything else he has going on and everything else he has going on. And so the book takes place over a long Halloween weekend. It's rainy, and through the course of the book and the weekend, they get to know one another. They get to know that they're both keeping secrets from each other. And also, his name is Emmett, and he's not the only one who's keeping secrets. He's not the only one who needs healing. She needs healing too. So she's a therapist and she's used to getting people to open up to her. She's used to being the listener. But what happens is that Emmett starts listening to her. And he's actually like, well, you kind of have a lot of stuff going on too. Maybe we should talk about that. So I'm gonna read a couple parts. The first part is when she first meets him on the bridge. The second part is when they're out for coffee. And the last part is when they're actually on the way back to her house. Tally. Tally saw him drop his backpack and climb over the metal railing, the bridge, the gray Ohio River below them, a swift, rippling ribbon. She was driving slowly because of the rain, the crepuscular light. She didn't give herself time to think, pulled over, lowered the passenger side window, and said, hey, hey, hey. The haze increased in frequency, volume. To her left, the blur of traffic. She punched her hazards, climbed over the armrest, and out of her car, leaving the passenger door peeled open. Hey, I see you. You don't know me, but I care about you. Don't jump, she said, loud enough for him to hear. But she didn't want to startle him either. The cars and trucks were loud. The rain was loud. The sky was loud. The bridge was loud. All those sounds echoing off it, rattling down and back up. The world was so loud. He turned slightly, his face wet with rain. Hi, I'm Tally, she said. I don't want you to do this. Is there somewhere I can take you instead? And I could take your backpack. What's your name? She was reluctant to touch the backpack. It was dark green and dirty. She reached for it. Don't touch it, he said softly. Far too softly for someone who was about to jump to his death. Why bother speaking softly when death is slipping its hand in your pocket? Tally put her hands out in front of her, surrendering. She wouldn't touch the backpack. Fine, a blessing. I'm sorry, is there somewhere I could take you and maybe we could talk, or I could call someone for you? Come with me. We can figure it out, she said, her voice climbing a rickety set of stairs. She'd almost forgotten she was a licensed therapist until she said those words. We can figure it out. And how often did licensed therapists get to do surprise on the street sessions? A lot, actually. But this one was on the bridge. She'd never lost a client to suicide, but she wasn't going to start now. He wasn't her client, but he could have been. She began speaking to him as if it were true. Instead of being out in the cold rain, she imagined they were in her cozy office with the calming lapis walls, the white noise machine, her chair a basil green, the shiny honey-smooth hardwood floors, the soothing soft almond suede couch. She had a scented oil diffuser on a table by the window, lavender and a hint of lemon. She'd mixed it herself. There were potted spider and dracaena plants, bamboo palms, a monstera, succulents in the sunlight, natural air purifiers. The bookshelves were packed neat and tight, with an amber salt lamp atop the one closest to the door. She pictured her office perfectly, transported herself there in her mind, willed that calm into her voice. Her receptionist's fingers gently clicked the computer keyboard, the rocky fountain bubbled in the waiting room. Her older brother, Lionel, was a big-shot finance bro and had given her the money to design everything so beautifully from scratch. It made her feel guilty, like she could never do anything so important and pretty for him. She didn't want the man on the bridge to know she was a therapist with a rich, big-shot brother and a calming office just yet, because that would separate them. She wanted him to think and know she was like him. They were the same. She had her share of want to jump days like everyone else, just had never made it over the railing before. No thanks, leave me alone, he said politely. Too politely for death. He hadn't completely made his mind up yet. I've had some shitty days too, some really shitty days. I just went through a divorce, and before the ink was dry, I found out my ex-husband got his mistress pregnant. I can't have babies, so it was literally the worst thing that could have happened to me. He's with her now, and they have a little girl. They moved to Montana to be closer to her family, who lives in Montana. I can't even remember where it is half the time, she said, hating that she'd used the word mistress. She usually tried to avoid it, knowing how it cast a spell she didn't intend. Mistress, with its snaky curves and Marilyn Monroe breathiness, implied so much drama and romance that it seemed desirable. I'm sorry that happened to you, he said, and paused. But lots of people live in Montana. It's a regular state. I have friends who live there. His voice snapped, politeness averted. He was looking down at the river. It was cold and getting colder. Late October, the nights were getting longer. That alone made Tally start to question whether life was worth living. God turning out the lights. Autumn was okay, but winter? Winter was too brutal to tackle alone, and this would be the second winter since her divorce. Joel would be spending winter in Montana with his new wife and baby. Right. I'm sure Montana's fine. You said you had friends there. Why don't you come over to this side and tell me about your friends, Tally said, stepping closer to him. He looked at her before giving his attention back to the river. It was the first time she'd seen his face full on. He had a smattering of light freckles, like someone had accidentally spilled cinnamon across his nose and cheeks. And he was wearing a jacket the same color of his backpack. Both his jeans and boots, syrupy brown. Shattered energy seemed to pulse from him like sonar, tight blips of loneliness. Tally translated the echolocation easily. She was lonesome and blipping too. So after that, she gets him in the car. And a lot of people are like, oh no, don't do that. That's a terrible thing. She should never do that. Like, I watch a lot of Dateline, and women should never let a strange man get in the car with them, to which I completely agree. But also, it's a book and it's fiction, and I had to have it happen so the rest of the story can happen. And also, throughout the course of the book, I really do give Tally has a lot of self-awareness, and so that cognitive dissonance there, that whole idea that this is something she maybe shouldn't have been doing, this is something that's not really the safest thing for a woman to do. She knows that. She's completely aware of that, and she's trusting herself. This is not something she's ever done before. This is not necessarily something she'd ever do again, and that's what makes it special, and that's what really wanted me. That's what I wanted to do when I got to the page. It really kept driving me to want to write and want to see what happened. I wanted to know what happened, so I had to write the book to find out what would happen. So now they're at the coffee shop. His shirt seemed dry. He had nice hands, coffin square shoulders, a light brown reddish beard that matched his freckles. He slicked his damp hair back, rolled up the cuffs of his sleeves. She waited for him to take a drink of his coffee. When he took a drink of his coffee, they could begin. This was a therapy session, whether he knew it or not. He had to expect her to ask a lot of questions. They'd met under extraordinary circumstances. They were in this together. He sipped his coffee, broke off a piece of donut, and ate it. He was very neat, careful to keep the crumbs on the plate. How are you feeling? She asked. I need to take my medicine, he said after he chewed, swallowed. Antidepressants? That's all this was. The chemicals in his brain were off kilter, and his medicine would fix it. She'd had clients who went off their meds, and it wasn't until they had an extreme wake-up call that they realized how much they needed their prescriptions. Had the Bridge woken Bridge up? She could take him to get meds, pay for them. Where's your medicine? My backpack, he said, tilting his head toward his feet where it was. He kept eating. She mirrored him, dug into her donut, a treat she allowed herself only every now and then, but tonight was obviously different. The crumbs were sticking to her fingers, and she wiggled them to shake them off. We could get a bottled water. And is there someone you can stay with? Do you think you need to go to a hospital? I could take you there, she said. There were people she could call. She had connections, doctors, a fireman who used to be a neighbor. She could piece a rescue together. Didn't he need to be rescued? Antihistamines. It's my allergy medicine, he said after he drank more of his coffee. Like, look, lady, why would I go to a hospital for allergy medicine? You're being crazy. I'm fine. Please stop being crazy and let me drink my dark blend in peace. Well, I mean, because of the Bridge. Hospital because you were going to jump to your death. That's why hospital. That was then. This is a new moment. Still important to discuss, though, don't you think? I'm not from here. My family's from Clementine, he said. Tally had heard of it. Knew Clementine was a small city in southeastern Kentucky, about 3 hours away. You're half black? I don't imagine there are a lot of us in Clementine, Tally said, leaning forward. She'd never seen a face like Bridges before, mixed with a million things. His thick, Kennedy-like dark blonde hair blushed with red. My grandmother was black, and no, you're right. Not a lot of us know, he said. She liked that he told her something about his family and how he blew across the top of his coffee, the ripples it made. She liked watching him finish his donut. Her brain fizzed. This man wanted to die less than an hour ago, but now he was sitting across from her, careful not to burn his mouth. He seemed to purposely flood himself with more gentleness as he thanked her again. His necklace had slipped to the front of his undershirt, a small gold cross winking light. Should we call your family? She asked, pulling her phone out of her pocket and setting it on the table in between them, though she couldn't say she expected him to agree. In order to keep him talking, she would have to tell him about herself. My family's from here in Tennessee. Some are from Alabama. Do you get along with your family? I don't care about things like that, he said. What do you care about? I don't care about small talk. Neither do I. That's why I'm asking you about big things, so we don't waste our time together, she said. The corner of his mouth rose and twitched. I like this song, he said. The coffee shop speakers were playing Radiohead down low, Knives Out. I do too. It's so moody and strange, she said. Commiseration, empathy. It usually worked, got people to bloom like flowers. Was this your first suicide attempt? I don't know what it was, but I guess I feel better now. It's hard to say. He felt better this quick? She didn't believe him. I'm going to the bathroom, he said, taking his backpack with him. Okay, she said, nodding. When he was behind the bathroom door, she immediately moved to his chair and rummaged through his pockets. A receipt for his jacket. He bought it that morning. What kind of person goes out in the morning and buys the jacket he wants to die in? Tally glanced up to make sure he wasn't opening the bathroom door. All clear. She was nervous and excited, the adrenaline rabbit beating her heart, her hands shaking. In an inside pocket, she found folded paper, a note. She didn't have time to check. She pulled it out and put it in her pocket, glanced at the bathroom door again, and put her hand back in his jacket. Another piece of paper. Another note? She took it. No way would he not notice both of them missing, but she'd figure that out later when she could get alone and read them. They were probably nothing. She sat in her seat, drank more of her coffee. 2 minutes, and he returned with his backpack, sat across from her. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling better now, he said. I splashed cold water on my face. Technically, you already had cold water on your face from the cold rain. I guess you're right. Bridge was gaslighting her in a yellow-orange whoosh, almost choosing suicide, now acting like it was no big deal. She was frustrated with him, felt connected to him. The idea embarrassed her. She had a habit of forming quick, intense connections to people she barely knew. Before GPS, worrying over whether someone she'd given directions to made it to their destination, or when she was in a bigger city on public transportation, not being able to stop herself from asking a crying person if they were okay, even when everyone else was determined not to speak or make eye contact with them. Occasionally, clients got intensely attached to her, emailing and calling at all hours of the night, wanting her to meet their families. She reminded them that clear boundaries were important for everyone to have, although she didn't tell them how hard it was for her to listen to her own advice. I forgot to tell you that before she knows his name is Emmett, she calls him Bridge because she found him on a bridge. And something I do usually, anytime I'm writing a book or a story, I always have one image that kind of kicks it off and makes me want to work on something for 6 years or 10 years. With whiskey and with whiskey and ribbons, it was actually I had an image of a man holding a little brown baby. The baby wasn't his, and it was snowing, and that was the original image I had for that book. And yeah, I spent about 10 years working on it, and it just came from that little image. And with this book, with This Close to Okay, it was a man on the bridge. I made a note in my phone that said a man is on the bridge, is going to jump, someone stops him, takes him home instead. And then 6 years later, my book came out on Tuesday from Grand Central Publishing. That's usually how it works for me. So that was the original image, and she calls him Bridge until she knows that his name is Emmett. And so this last part, they're on the way home, and this ends the first chapter. The book is written from both. You get to hear from both of them, so we get both points of view. And this is the end of her section, and then immediately after this, we do actually hear from Bridge for the first time. They were en route to her place. He'd been quiet so far in the car, only replying to the questions she asked. So you have a house or an apartment? I used to. Not anymore, really, he said. You don't have anywhere to stay? I didn't say that. I just said I don't have a house or an apartment. You have a car? I don't have a car here, not in town, he said. How do you get around? I get around all right, he said. He looked over at her with the backpack in his lap. He kept his hand on top of it. Tally's fear scuttled back when she glanced at that backpack. That's where his torture devices could be, the ropes, the gun, the knives, Knives Out. Creepy song to be floating across the coffee shop. Tally kept hearing the chorus in her head. It was full dark and still raining, although not as much as before. Halloween was on Saturday. What was she doing? Locked in her car, this stranger in her passenger seat, driving him to her house? This was a perfect horror film she had created, and when they got to her place, he'd take whatever it was out of that backpack, murder her, and put her somewhere no one would ever find her. Her parents and brother would be on TV begging for her return. Years from now, her brother would write a book about it. It'd be a bestseller, get optioned for a movie. One of those kids from one of those teen vampire shows would play Bridge. He'd win an Oscar. Her brother would become a highly sought after screenwriter and leave his family, start dating one of the young girls from the same teen vampire show. And all that should have kept her from taking Bridge to her house, but none of it did. She never did things like this, and she was leaning into that chaotic energy, eager to see what was waiting for her on the other side. The wide mouth of the world was opening up. Something was happening, something beyond her control. She'd been given the keys to the lion's cage, and she was inside it, petting it, staring into its pale amber eyes. And that was all I was going to read tonight. Thank you for listening and for being here. I was kind of, my brain, it took a minute for my brain to turn on in the beginning and to remember what my book was about. Can't even remember how many events I've had in the past couple days. So apologies for that. But I do remember now. I do remember what my book is about. If anyone has any questions.
I love the sections you chose to read. Thank you so much for reading for us.
Oh, thank you.
It just kills you to read more. You just have to read more after that. So we don't have any questions popping up in the chat yet, but please, if you do have any, please ask in the ask a question or the chat, and I'll voice them for Leesa. I had a couple questions for you, Leesa, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So I know that you mentioned you'd gotten the idea for the book about 6 years ago, and then I loved how you said you had to write the scene to see what would happen. When did Tally specifically as a character like really come to life for you, and when did you know that she was going to be like a therapist and that kind of stuff? When did that part come out?
My shorter answer is I don't know. I don't remember. I really, I don't actually remember when I thought about her, but originally I was really thinking, I wanted to make it, really thrilling. I wanted them both to have like the secrets behind why he was standing there on the bridge. I wanted him to have that mysteriousness, and then I wanted her to also have secrets too. It's like, a lot of very general writing advice or tips. I don't pay attention to any of them really, but I will say because I think people should just do what they want. But I will say that it's really good to start at I've seen it, people talk about it before, and I talked about it yesterday and a couple other things, but to start as close to the end as possible and to start at the most exciting or one of the most exciting parts of your character's life. And so I was thinking this is a very, very exciting moment for her. And so so when I was writing her and I was thinking, what kind of job could she have? And those don't always come to me. I usually can see the characters and I can write the characters, but like their jobs and stuff like that don't really. But then I knew that although I was having all these really dark, heavy, big emotions in this book, I wanted to create a safe space for those emotions. I did the same thing with Whiskey and Ribbons. We have a widow. She's just had a baby, but I'm trying to make it as comforting and as much of a soft nest for her as I possibly could. And so since I knew Tally was going to bring him back to her house, and I talk about hygge, which is a Danish word for the absence of anything annoying. It's this whole culture of like being really cozy and having wool socks and candles in the winter and all that stuff. Since I knew she was going to do that, from there, I think I was just thinking, why would she be so good at that? Like, why is this her thing? Like, this could be her job, really. And so the part I read, like, she instantly is like, oh, yeah, so she does the same thing in her therapy practice. Let me just bring that coziness with me and try to use that magic on whoever I can. And right now it's him. Let me try to use that magic on him, try to calm him down. She says early on that she almost feels guilty billing her clients, because what she does is just like heat up something warm. She gives them a mug of something warm, and all of a sudden they want to like open up. It's like all cozy having tea time, and all of a sudden they want to start sharing their secrets. So she uses those sort of magical things. And then I had her have all that expertise, all that experience. It's her job every day, but had her keep it from him because I just thought it would be interesting for the reader. And it was interesting for me too. A lot of times I really am just like, ooh, what's going to happen next?
I love how she like consciously put herself in her office when she was talking to him. Like she needed her own comfort space, like you were talking about. In
Yeah.
order to give him the comfort, she had to find it first. Um,
Absolutely.
I thought the parallels there were just incredible. Um, let's see, I do have a question. Melissa asks if you needed to interview therapists to find this perspective for Tally.
I did. I have a girlfriend who was a therapist, and so I did have some questions for her. Um, I also was, I had at one point in my life, I considered becoming a therapist. And so I had done a lot of research and work there just on my own, because it was something that I wanted to do. I was thinking that I wanted to do it for a career. So I did do a lot of that. Um, and I felt very, I learned a lot. I really did learn a lot. And I wanted Tally to be thinking about that, even though she does some things that would make someone be like, oh, what is she doing, she's keeping this, but I wanted that to be something, the way she operates and moves through the world and the way she relates to people, it's right there, it's heavy on her all the time because it really is her job. But I also really wanted to make sure that she is a human person and she's not working all the time and she needs a break. Like, she took this long weekend to take a break, and look at what happened. She ends up taking care of someone for the weekend, but in turn he ends up taking care of her too. So, you know thank you. Thank you for the question.
Sure, we have another one too. Thanks, guys. These are great. Heather asked, she said she loves how religion is incorporated, and was that a conscious choice or for a focus? And did it show up in the first draft or later?
And you said religion. I didn't hear the first part.
Yeah, sorry. She said she loved how religion was incorporated.
Got you. Yeah. That was in the first. That was in the first draft. That's specifically because, I gave faith to Tally. And so when she's confronted with something like eternity, when she's confronted with life or death right in front of her, it's the first thing she does. She just calls on Jesus. She calls on God. That's what she does. I am a believer, and it comes out a lot in my books. I know that. I also know that not everyone is a believer. I also know people don't want to be preached to. I also know that everyone has their own path and journey with that. But with Tally specifically, there's nothing else that could have happened in her mind besides to immediately pray for this man who she wants to save his life. He's, regardless of what you believe about God or don't believe about God, if he's about to jump from this bridge, he's about to find out something that we don't know right now. So she wants to call on a sovereign holy God who's bigger than her, bigger than this moment, who can see eternity, and to help her. So yeah, that part of it, it just comes, that was just part of her, that was part of her character. But very quickly we get back from Emmett. She's like, I'm trusting God, and he's like, what if there's no God? And she has to go, and she's like, then I don't know. And that's really human too. On the bridge she asked him, like, because he's like, don't worry about it, it's done. And she's like, what's done? And he's like, I don't know. And she just loves that humanity there. It's just this sports, it's this instant connection. It's this instant intimacy that they have where the masks are off. This is a serious thing. They're not just it's not just like small talk in the grocery line, like, you're about to jump, I don't want you to, don't do this. And it just comes out. Yeah, so that part of it is that part of it does come out of my writing. I don't think that anyone would be shocked to know that my dad's a preacher, shocked to know that I love Jesus. But I don't give it to all my characters, but it's a big important part of Tally's life for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved how she is like, she said something like, if it's not real, then what do I do? So it's like she's kind of thinking herself through it, and I felt like that made her very human from a
Yeah.
believer perspective.
Thanks for saying that. Thank you.
And Melissa said it wasn't preachy, no worries. So your feedback is
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I also wanted to ask a little bit about, since we were talking about Emmett, I was curious what inspired you to write about mental health, specifically the depression and suicide ideation, I believe is how you worded it. And I read in another interview that you were very careful with how you talked about it. What made you want to write about it?
Yeah, I'll start by saying I was very, very careful. I wanted to make sure that I never, that I did not use the word commit. I had read a lot of the sensitivities to the language there to commit it as if it's the same way you commit some sort of crime. And I wanted to be very, very sensitive to that. I'm very, very sensitive to anyone who has been dealing with it themselves or who has loved someone dearly, who has dealt with it or lost someone who they love, someone they love dearly to suicide. I wanted to be very, very careful with my words there. I, you know, I wanted to write a book that was about loving someone who's mentally ill. Um, Wanting to protect and take care of someone who's mentally ill, the limits of that, the things we can do for each other, the things we cannot do for each other, the things that people can only do for themselves, the importance of that just in this world, in this life. So there were a lot of reasons why I wanted to address mental health specifically. I also wanted to write a book that shows the power of strangers meeting at just the right moment. They meet each other at just the right moment that changes. After this weekend, their lives are changed forever. And so they meet at just the right moment, and she needs something, he needs something. Together they're going to work on this healing, what that does and doesn't look like for them. I think it's also something everyone can relate to, whether it's themselves personally or a story that they hear or any art that they are invested in or something they may deal with later on in life. I don't think anyone is untouched by those things, even if it's just a story that you've heard. you know I think that I say you, but I mean a story that we've heard or a story that who someone has heard. And so I think everyone can relate to it in some way, on some level.
Definitely. I also, you mentioned art like just now, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that because you do mention music very specifically throughout the book, and I believe you made a playlist for the book as well.
I
Did you
did.
did you listen to music while you're writing it, or that was just like you thought of songs while you were in a certain scene? Like, how did that work for you?
I do not listen to music with words while I'm writing. I can't listen to any words. I listen to a lot of scores from like movies I like, and a lot of classical music and piano and Chopin, and I listen to a lot of the lo-fi hip hop and electronic music, but no words. What I did there specifically was, well, with Tally, she instantly just plays him a song. Like she's gonna play him ABBA, but is in case he doesn't love ABBA, can be very polarizing. ABBA is like my favorite band. But someone may not like it, which I don't get it, but sure, I accept it. But it's like, so she's just searching for a song to sort of distract him, like, oh, he might like this song. um and then later when they're in the car, she's like, oh, and they go out for lunch, and she's flipping through the channels, and she's like, well, tell me when to stop. And then they hear a song, Bring It On Home to Me by Sam Cooke, and he's like, stop here. And she's like, I love this song. And I picked that song specifically because I just literally cannot imagine someone not loving Sam Cooke's voice. I can't even imagine a world where someone doesn't love that song. And so it was an easy choice for me. Like, and so I usually will use music in that way, in almost a romantic way for me. I don't mean romance between the characters, but I mean like the way that music can just it's a time machine. The way that it can just it's transportation. It's a vehicle for that. It just instantly, you hear the right song and you can, and then it takes you back. And so I'm usually using music in that way. Also, there's another part right when they get back to her place where she's just, they're just talking. Oh, this is the kind of music I like. And you really can't get to know someone that way. And even if you're talking, you might not have anything in common, and you can land on that one song. Like, oh, I do remember that song. I remember that song from high school, or something. You have some kind of connection there. So that's usually how I'm using music whenever I talk about specific songs in the book.
Thank you. That was one part that I really enjoyed, was because I recognized all the songs that have been mentioned so far, so I could immediately like feel the mood kind of.
And if you want to go to if anyone wants to go to my website and you go to the This Close to Okay page, you can listen to the playlist there. My original playlist had like almost 2,000 songs on it, but don't worry, there are only 14 on this one. And so you can actually listen to it if you want to. I think it's really good. And when I was in college, the newspaper did a feature on me and called me the mixtape princess. So it's not just me who thinks I make good mixes. It's also the local newspaper. So you have to believe that.
I'm gonna put that page in the chat so people can go check it out. Um,
Thank you.
sure. So Meg also wanted to hear from you. She said, "I'd love to hear how the last year has been for you. You're the absolute queen of cozy, and I'd love to hear how you and your wonderful family has stayed sane in these difficult times."
Oh wow, Queen of Cozy, man. I'm loving that. I'm gonna keep that forever. No one can if she says it, it's true, and no one can ever take it away. Um, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that sweetness. It's if someone had asked me if my writing life has changed, and it hasn't because I always write at home. So I know like I have some girlfriends who are hurting because they go out, they go out every day and write at coffee shops and stuff. I can't write out. I have to stay home. So that part of it hasn't changed for me. I have definitely turned up the cozy with no shame. Like I do never feel bad about lighting an extra candle now. Like I never feel bad. About really buying anything that just makes me feel cozy or like better or like soft. Right before all this happened, I bought a velvet couch and I needed like a soft couch. Oh, and also like plants, which I already loved plants, but like now the house is filled with like now the house is filled with plants because like it started slowly and I was like, oh wait a minute, I like how this makes me feel because I just have something else to focus on. So there are definitely more plants, probably more socks. I bought a couple of those nap dresses that were everywhere and they changed my life and I love them so much. I bought like the Taylor Swift folklore cardigan and just live in that too. Like things I normally wouldn't do because I don't need them or whatever, but we're in a global pandemic and I need and like my daughter's 16 and I was like, we have to have matching Taylor Swift cardigans. I wouldn't normally, I mean, well, maybe I would probably normally do that, but I did it real fast. Like I had there was no question. Like I wasn't thinking like, do we really? So I've definitely been leaning into that stuff even more. Although that stuff is my life anyway, so it's hard to think about me doing it even more, but I'm just gonna keep digging in. This is me now. I'm not turning back.
It suits the queen of cozy, right?
I just have to do it. I mean, it's just a rule since I'm the queen of cozy. Sorry.
I love that. Um, we have another question from Heather, if you don't mind. She said, "You write gorgeous short stories too. How do you decide whether a story will end up as a short piece or a novel length piece?"
Hi Heather. Thank you so much for your sweetness always. Such a sweet heart to me. You know, I don't know. I think there's a little bit of magic there that maybe I don't even understand. I do usually know, I would say most of the time I know early on whether it's going to be a short story or a novel. I would say about 80% of the time, and that may sound like a weird number, but I think it's true. I think most of the time I do know, but so I do have a new novel coming out a year from now, and it's called Half Blown Rose, which is a line from Jane Eyre. And it so the So We Can Glow paperback just came out in January from Grand Central, and at the end of it, I added an extra story, a bonus story for the paperback, and it's a story called Vincent. That is a short story, but that short story turned into Half Blown Rose, the novel that's going to be coming out. And it wasn't something I did on purpose. I just wrote a book during quarantine, and that was the book that I wrote. But so I didn't, when I wrote Vincent, it was going to be a short story and then it just turned into a novel. But I don't know how it happened. I mean, I guess I would say an easy answer would be I just can't stop, really. I just want to know more. And so the woman's name is Vincent, and I just wanted to know more about her. She lives in Paris. And I really just wanted to start to, just like I said earlier, I wanted to know what else was happening with her. So it kind of, sometimes it's an accident, and then sometimes I write a short story and it's a short story and that's it. Like in So We Can Glow, there's a short story and it's just 2 sentences long and that's it. I will never touch that story again. That's the story and that's all of it. So it's hard to say sometimes, but it Whiskey and Ribbons was a short story from the beginning too. It was a play for a little bit. I worked on it as a play and got really frustrated with the format. Screenwriting and plays, the format of it is really, it's too constricting for me. And then it turned into a novel. So it has worked out for me to do this. So I'll just, if it ain't broke.
That's perfect. Speaking of writing, I was wondering how, since you learned about this book, like you thought of it about 6 years ago, how long did it take the actual writing part of it?
I mean, this is another one that's kind of hard to say because I was working on two books at the same time. So Whiskey and Ribbons came out from Hub City in March of 2018, and then in May of 2018 I sold two books. I sold So We Can Glow and This Close to Okay. So I was literally promoting Whiskey and Ribbons and still doing a lot. I mean, we did so much with that book, and I went all around and did so many like really awesome things and got to go do so much stuff. And then I was also working on So We Can Glow and This Close to Okay. So it started there. So I got the idea for it about 6 years ago, sold it in 2018, but still had to finish another book first and finish another book tour. But when I'm finishing a book, I'll have a deadline and I'll sit down and do it and get the pages behind me. So the actual work, when I'm actually sitting there and writing, I can finish the first draft of a book easily in, a couple months. But then it's the going back and forth. And then, my agent, who's amazing, is one of my first readers after my husband. And then we'll go back and forth before we get it. So it can be a matter of months once I actually get down to it. But I do a lot of writing away from the page. So I'm not sitting at my laptop. I'm not making notes in my journal, but I'm just going for a walk. I'm listening to music and I'm thinking. So I do so much of the work away from the page. When I finally do get there, it's very easy for me to get 2,000 words a day, 3,000 words a day, just depending on what else is going on in the world or in my house. So I didn't answer your question in a very neat way. I realize it. And it can be different. It really can be different every time. But, I can usually get a draft knocked out that I would never show anyone. No one would ever get their eyes on this draft because it's terrible and it's not ready. But that's how I get started. It could be a couple months.
That's awesome. So you get it kind of all of it down and then you work with it from there.
Yeah, it's more like wrestling instead of working.
I don't think I've ever heard it described that way. I love that.
Yeah.
Very active words. One of the things, anybody else who has questions, by the way, just keep popping them in the ask a question thing. They've been great so far. I was going to ask you, what was your favorite part about writing this book? Like either your favorite scene or your favorite character or just your favorite aspect of it.
I love it all. I love every character. I love the book from beginning to end, and I think it's super great. But I will also say that one of my favorite parts for sure is so in the book, Tally really feels like keeping him distracted is going to help. She uses her therapy training there to talk to him and say it really matters to have something to look forward to. Let's have something to look forward to. So her brother is crazy rich, has a huge Gatsby-like party for Halloween. And so she invites Emmett to the Halloween party. Hey, why don't we go to the Halloween party? That's on Saturday. Why don't we do that? And that's something we can look forward to. And then we'll get to everything else when we get to it. And so I do really like the Halloween party in the book. I spent a lot of time writing it. I wanted it to be just really soaked in Halloween. Just, the rain is a character in the book. Pretty much her cozy house is a character in the book. And then the fact that it's Halloween weekend looms really large over the book too. So, it's raining all weekend, it's dark, and they're going to this huge party that I want to go to. So I wrote, what I would want to see there. And so there's like tons and tons of descriptions there of this party and all the stuff that happens at the party and their costumes and everyone else's costumes and the music and the food. And there's a little monkey at the party. And so I just kind of have some guy's got a little monkey on his shoulder. So I do love that part of the book just because I want to go to that party.
I can't wait to get there. They just got to her house and where I am, but I researched how the rest of the book goes, but I'm still really excited to read the party. So after that question, I was going to ask, what was the more difficult or challenging part of it?
Yeah, well, I actually can't talk about that without spoiling it. But okay. Thank you. It's a really great question. But I will say quickly that any of the darkness in the book, when the secrets start to come to light, anytime I'm actually going into the things that have actually happened and the darkness in the book and the grief in the book, those are always hard. Those are always really hard to write. And I was talking about this yesterday, like no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. And so today I was listening to the audiobook, which is amazing if people are, audiobook people. But I was listening to it, and at the end, like, I mean, I was just like, I got a cry headache. I was crying so much from listening to it. And it's like, I wrote the book. It's my book. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I've read the book hundreds and hundreds of times. And I was like, oh, like I was even still, because I was so in the audiobook. They just do such an amazing job. So, but it's the weight of the grief and the secrets and the darkness and what brought Emmett to the bridge is still like sort of takes my breath away, and I'll wonder like why I'm like this. But like I'm like, why am I like this? It's the same thing with Whiskey and Ribbons, and this is not a spoiler. Like in the first line, we learn that her husband Amos is killed in the line of duty when she's 9 months pregnant. And I have been like, why am I like this? Like I'm like that with that. Like I try to reverse. I'm like, why did I do that? I love him so much. I put that book, I literally put that book down for years because I couldn't believe I was like this. I couldn't believe I was doing this. So I get so attached to it. But then when readers come to me and they feel the same way, I'm like, you know, the pain in me is reflected in this, and it's reflected in the readers too. So I'm glad it works out and that people feel things when they read my books, but it's hard for me sometimes. I don't know why I'm like this. Maybe I'll write something different next time.
I think you made it worth it for them to go through that with you. So that's really special. That's a special thing that writers can do. Um, I'm gonna take a quick minute. So if anyone else has any questions, pop them in there. That will probably just take one or two more. So I would love to hear more from you guys. But we have a couple of comments about Heather says such a beautiful book. Kate
Thank you,
said
Heather.
happy to be here with you, and Betsy said she's excited about the buzz on your book. And
Thank y'all, I adore y'all. I really adore y'all. Y'all have been so good to me. I really, really appreciate y'all forever. Y'all know this. I tell you every time I talk to you, and I'm saying it again. Thank you.
you're the sweetest. So also there's we've had a few pre-orders for the book already, which is super exciting. If you haven't gotten a copy yet, please look into it. And there's a little button on the bottom here, right there, where you can go purchase it on our website. And they do have all the books you buy from us will have these beautiful book plates in them. I think you wrote them in sparkly pen, which just suits the cozy thing so well. I just as soon as I got them in the mail, made my day because it's the only book plates I've ever gotten that had gold sparkly Sharpie.
Really? Oh, good. Yeah. I have gold ones and I have these copper ones. Yeah, I'm not signing your book unless it's sparkly. So no. I've got like big boxes of those sparkly ones because those Sharpies after a little bit you sound like three things and then they're out. Yeah, so I've got a bunch of boxes of them.
You just keep them on hand.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's the best. We have another comment popped up. Maggie said she hasn't finished the book yet, but she knows. She said, "I'll let you know that I love the heart and the cozy."
Thank you. That's my favorite. I mean, it was funny because I was talking to my editor, who's lovely and amazing, and my whole team is lovely and amazing at Grand Central. My publicist is just a dream. I could not ask for more. But when I was talking to my editor about it, I would constantly go back. So if every new draft, I would add more cozy. Like I would add more plants. I would write her and be like, I need to add more plants. Sorry. And then she has cats. Tally has cats. Jim and Pam from The Office, and then I'd add more pillows, and I'd add more stuff at the fall festival and more stuff that's even cozier. So thank you so much for that comment because I was overloaded. Every couple of days I'm like, you know what, she needs more twinkle lights, they need to make tea again, how about cookies? So I just put it all in there.
Well, Emmett appreciates it too because he walks in and he's immediately notices the plants. And I love that.
I know. I really made it almost like this magical place. Really, I mean, it's just a little bit, just a shy short of magical realism when it comes to her home, because he's like, yeah, I do want to stay here. This was the right thing for us to do. Let's hang out.
And then she describes him like one of her rescue cats that she dragged home with her.
Just a little kitten. And that's, that's the pushback I have with anyone who's like, she shouldn't be doing this. This is, why would she do this? I'm like, because he's like a kitten. She knows what's up with kittens. She's just one of those women who would see a little kitten out in the rain and have to bring him home. I mean, I understand that. That's sweet.
And he's like not sure how to deal with that. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm like,
I don't think most men want to be told, "Oh, look at you, you're just a little puff." That's what she tells him. She's like, "You're just a little puff." Oh, please, yeah, most men aren't gonna love that. At least not from a strange woman at first. They have to warm up to it.
I noticed another thing about Emmett is the way that he notices things is I'm curious about with his perception, you put like little parentheses in italics that has like the things that he notices.
Right.
Is that why did you feel like putting that in there for Emmett?
Yeah, I can't tell you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's just, I'll find out.
You definitely will find out. Yeah. So in the book, I have Emmett's inner thoughts, and he has these parentheticals where he's noticing everything. He's noticing everything about how he feels in the moment. He's noticing everything about her home. He's noticing the weather. He's noticing all this. This is something that he's done. That's something that he does. It's something I gave to him specifically. Tally does not do it. He only does it. And so the reader is really brought into that. And I want, like you, which you do so wonderfully, I want you to wonder why he's doing that. I want you to wonder what he's doing there. Yeah, it's an important part of the book. And so yeah, email me later.
Okay. That'll be fun. Yeah, I noticed like she notices things, but she doesn't apply the same. You apply a different importance to her noticing
Right.
things to him. So that's important for his character to have that side like that. Okay. And I had another question, but I think you answered it already while we were chatting. You did. I'm going to look at your playlist too because I'm really interested about seeing what kind of other music you had in mind when you were writing it and reading it.
Well, it's really good. I just want you to be ready for it. It's really good. So
I'd be excited. Good old Spotify. Let me check real quick, see if we have any other questions. Everyone was really excited to get on here with you, and I did want to ask you a little bit too about your next book. It's coming out in 2022.
yes.
Have you finished it, or are you still working on it?
Yes. No, I've turned it in. Yeah.
Okay. What's it called? So we can keep an eye out for it.
It's called Half Blown Rose.
And
it's a line from Jane Eyre.
Anything like any little tidbits you want to tell us about that book?
So I sold it as How Stella Got Her Groove Back and Before Sunrise, if you've heard of the Before Sunrise trilogy. And that's because they're traveling all around Europe. It's set in Paris, and Vincent is the woman. She's in her 40s. She leaves her marriage basically after her husband's betrayal. She leaves Kentucky and goes to live in her Paris apartment her parents own, and she teaches art at the Modern Art Museum there. And in one of her art classes is a young man named Lou. She begins this intense friendship and relationship with Lou. The only thing that's kind of weird there for her is that he is also the same age as her son. So he's in his 20s. She has two children who are also in their 20s, and so she has issues with that. She's also still married, but it's Paris. so does any of that matter? I don't know. I guess we'll see.
So we need to wonder some more, right?
Yes.
We need to read the book. Well, I'm looking forward to that one coming out too. I think that's probably all the questions we'll take tonight for this book. And did you have any like final thoughts you wanted to leave us with about This Close to Okay? I know that up in there. That's such a pretty cover.
Yeah, the cover is beautiful. Everyone's really great. Yeah, no, it's out now from Grand Central. I also just want to thank everyone at Hub City. You guys have just been so great. I was really, really stoked to do an event here. It's just a really, really special place for me, a special publishing house. I love everything they do. I love what y'all are doing, and I just really appreciate it. In my heart forever. Love y'all.
Oh, thanks. We were really excited to have you, and I remember seeing that you had a book coming out last year and a book coming out this year, and was determined that I was going to get a hold of you, and you answered right away and just were like so excited and so sweet. So thank
Well,
you.
I love it, and you're amazing. Your questions are great. You're really great at this, really, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. You were amazing to talk to, and I love the things that you read and the graceful way you answered all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll see you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
Leesa.